Thank you, Charlie, for that introduction. It is an honor and a pleasure to be again here in New Jersey, surrounded by freedom fighter Americans, supporting the amazing work of Women for Gun Rights and obviously the work of CNJFO. Nadie sabe lo que tiene hasta que lo pierde. Or in English, people don't know what they have until they lose it. That is a common phrase used in America and also in a lot of parts of the world to explain that sensation of frustration when people make bad choices. But our sense of wisdom elevates when we tell that phrase to people who have lost something significant because they made a bad decision. Especially if we told them so. And we say, you see, you didn't know what you had and you lost it. Interestingly, this is a phrase that we don't use to ourselves, even when we messed up, despite knowing the important message, because its meaning feels distant from our reality. Because we believe we truly know and value what we have. But do we? Venezuela is far away from the United States, yet we use this phrase in the same way, in the same manner, with the same intention. You see, people from around the world, we have a lot of differences, but our human behavior is pretty much the same. And there are many behaviors that I saw destroy Venezuela that are destroying the United States today. Venezuela was ideologically and politically divided during the 1997 elections when Hugo Chávez was a presidential candidate. Many adults were too busy and I would say uninterested to get involved politically or even vote, because it doesn't matter. Who cares to go to vote? While Hugo Chávez flashy socialist ideas were blinding the rest. I was a 16-year-old air pistol shooter, too young to vote, and perhaps too young to understand the seriousness of the situation. Thankfully, there was a Cuban friend, shooter, who talked to my teammates and me, a bunch of teenagers, about the dangers of socialism and what would happen if Hugo Chávez took power. He talked about censorship, political prisoners. He talked about not being able to buy whatever you could at the store, even if you had the money. He talked about small business going downhill. He talked about gun control. He talked about oppression. And as a teenager, and I'm thankful he did talk about all those things, because at first I couldn't understand it. I couldn't grasp the information and all that important, valuable information that he was talking about. I couldn't relate to it. But this friend, which I call William, he kept comparing Cuba to Venezuela. And that comparison sounded preposterous. Who could compare Cuba, an island where people were pretty much trapped, to Venezuela, a larger country, rich country? Yes, we had our problems, but we're still a rich country with the largest oil reserve in the world. How could you compare such countries? Venezuelans thought that nothing that happened in Cuba could ever happen in Venezuela. But oh boy, how wrong we were. I felt the effects of socialism immediately, especially in the shooting world. Hugo Chávez, one of the first things he did with his socialist agenda was a war against gun owners. He created a chokehold in the industry. Gun shops started disappearing. Gun ranges started closing. You couldn't buy firearms, ammunition. As an athlete, it was difficult for us to get pellets and 22 caliber ammunition. Simultaneously, crime increased tremendously. The conversation among citizens changed. I remember a police officer talking to me at the range and telling me, you have to fight hard if somebody tries to kidnap you. He told me to never let anybody to take me away from them, because even if that meant that I would die in that moment, that was a better death than if I would go with them, because most likely my death could be worse. That was a conversation. I was still a teenager. To add insult to injury, even before Hugo Chávez got in power, Venezuela had a gun registration policy. Well, guess what? That was the first tool Hugo Chávez used to confiscate firearms, which led to the total ban of firearms by 2012. He got elected in 1998. You see, most people think that this happened right away. No. Socialists, these individuals, they have to go slow. And that's what they do. People get used to it. But guess what? Guess who were the ones who kept the guns? Criminals, right? They kept the guns, and they still do. And they are emboldened. Do not believe the liars in America that gun registration will not lead to confiscation. Historically, every country that imposed the registration of firearms ended up taking, or if you can say stealing, the guns from its citizens, like it happened in Canada, Venezuela, Australia, and many other countries. The interesting thing is that crime rate didn't go down. Violent crime still the same. And it won't go down until the government gives the citizen what stole from them. But we know that's not going to happen, because the government knows that a population that is disarmed is a population that can be easily manipulated and controlled. But you know all of this, don't you? The thing is, it's not only about knowing it. You have to understand that it's very close to us. It's already here. And I took you to a journey to my past. Now I'm going to take you back to our present in the United States. Well, I know that stories like mine and many people like me are very compelling and somewhat relatable. I want to share your thoughts about our current situation in the United States, especially when it comes to the Second Amendment. Gavin Newsom, who knows that guy? He's the governor of California. He proposed the 28th Amendment to the Constitution in June 2023. He has four proposals that research has shown that none of those will reduce crime. Some of them are, banning what he calls assault weapons or AR-15 rifles. Despite the FBI saying that even more people get killed by hand and feet than rifles. He talks about universal background check, but we know that the only way that you can enforce such a law, you have to register firearms. and we know what registration goes to. Besides, criminals are not going to go and get voluntarily go and do a background check. This proposal is meritless, and many treat it as such, primarily because changing the Constitution is very difficult. There are already 11,000 proposals in the docket, and I get that, but I don't dismiss this proposal so easily. And I want to put some perspective. One, Newsom's proposal to amend the US Constitution, I don't believe it's an accident or wishful thinking. While his plan is useless, I do believe changes to the Constitution, especially related to the Second Amendment, is part of the gun control agenda. Yes. And Newsom put it on the board for all to remain focused on our goal. You see, it's important to talk where we are and where we're going as gun owners and supporters of the Second Amendment, but we need to know where the others are and where they're going. Number two, gun control advocates are in it for the long haul. In other words, this is a generational goal. Say 20, 25 years from now, your children, your grandchildren, they are changing today, especially how AI, social media, and technology, they're changing how children think, how they learn, they're teaching them how to think in only one way. And you see, the same thing, the problem where it bothers me is that I talk to people from Venezuela, 30-year-old adults. They have children, they have families, and they do not remember how was Venezuela before Hugo Chávez, and they lived it. But you know what? They were too young. They don't remember. And the problem is that children here in the United States are losing opportunities to learn, to experience, and understand the value of the Second Amendment. 3, more states are succumbing to the gun control mob. The Gifford Law Center, a powerful gun control organization, rated New Jersey at A, they give you an A, and ranked it number 2 behind California as the best state because you guys have a lot of gun control laws. So, but that's not only that. Colorado, last week, was the last one to fall with tremendous with a strong gun control legislation. Now, I want you to think about this. The Gifford Center, this center, lists 19 states, 19, almost half of the states as A and Bs. And we're losing terrain, okay? The thing is that gun control advocates are well organized and funded, and they're moving fast and efficiently. We need to move faster. We need to be more active. We need to get in the game because they're doing it. And number 4, many Americans, especially conservatives, are moving away from these states, and we all know why. We cannot blame them. But the problem with that is that they're leaving the open door for more liberal politicians to get seats in Congress. Changing the political balance while solidifying their power. Now, remember what I said at the beginning about changing the Constitution. And I hope those 4 points I mentioned you give you a little bit an idea of where they're going. So here are 3 strategies that I think could help tremendously. Of course, there's not the only ones, but the ones I think in my heart would help a lot. 1, take the time to read, teach your children and your grandchildren about the US Constitution and the sacrifices that our founding fathers made to create this great nation. They're not teaching that in school anymore. How many kids you can talk to? Teenagers. With the way AI, social media is changing, I believe we are a generation or two, maybe, for not enjoying the country as we know it today. And we know, I'm sure that most of you know, things are not looking nice. But I want you to think of this. Teaching your children the values and taking them to the range and teaching safety is an armor for them to keep fighting for their freedoms in their future, because guess what? In history, fighting for freedom is a never-ending quest. It doesn't end with us. We have to share that with our children over and over. Number 2, make friends, not enemies. I know it may be difficult, very difficult, to talk with staunch anti-gun individuals. It's perhaps one of the hardest things to do. But you know what? I guarantee you that most of them only know what they know from social media, from the mainstream media. They don't know what things, the real names of things, and the rifles and the magazines. They have no idea. And sometimes it's better for you to swallow your ego and maybe stop talking so you cool down the temperature. That maybe you regain that conversation another day. That maybe that person says, you know what? That person seems like common sense. It's not like those, what I hear that mainstream media tell me who those gun owners are. And maybe that person would accept your invitation to go to the gun range. I saw Venezuela fall to pieces, the society fall to pieces, because people lost their abilities to talk, to understand that we can agree to disagree, and that destroyed families, friends, making it easier for the government to control their lives. Number 3, be bold and speak up. Not too long ago, I learned that 30% of colonists, about 30, maybe a little more of colonists were patriots. But a big bunch, maybe about 40%, were neutral. Can you imagine the pushback the patriots got because we're going to war? Can you imagine maybe the indifference from those neutral individuals while the patriots were about to give their lives to do something so meaningful? These are the men and women we have to look at as our role models when we face the challenges to defend our freedom. Lastly, supporting organizations like Women for Gun Rights or CNJFO is an essential line of defense because they put our words to and our thoughts, especially in the front of legislators. These groups, these organizations, are doing what many of us cannot do. But it's not enough with supporting them. You need to be there. You need to, when they say, hey, we need people to go and show up. Because that sends a strong message for other people to do the same. But at the same time, it is a moral booster for all the ladies that are in the front line. The fight to keep our country together is everyone's responsibility. And no matter if those against us throw rockets of hate and despair, you always need to show that your beliefs and your respect for our country still here in your heart. because the power to protect the Constitution and our country is in our hands. Thank you very much.